Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short-track, door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com. Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Well, the break is over, and it's back to work for the Pit Pass guys and for those guys in NASCAR and their teams. Hi, I'm Joe Williams, and coming up next on Pit Pass with Larry Woody, we're going to begin the 2013 season with a look at the top 10 stories from 2012. We'll also talk a little bit about NASCAR preseason thunder going on this week in Daytona. And on the local front, some big news coming out of Highland Rim. All that and more coming up next on Pit Pass.
Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show. From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Pit Pass. I'm Joe Williams, along with my idol, Larry Woody, who's, you know, I say that a lot, but Larry, I actually mean that. I want to start off 2013 being as honest as I can possibly be.
Joe, we can tell it's sincere. It comes straight from the heart. And
I mean, literally, it has for you.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I grew up reading what this man was writing, and then I went to trying to change what he was writing. Reading was a whole lot easier. I was much more successful with the reading.
The big words stumped you, admit it.
Every once in a while. How are you? Have a good Christmas.
Had a great Christmas. At our house, nothing blew up or burned down, so we came out ahead.
That's always a plus.
That's a plus, yeah.
All right, 2013. Larry, what is this? Your 35th, 40th?
Dog years, it's 120. Sports writer years. No, I started in 68, covering my first race, and I didn't know which direction the cars ran. So
this is 45,
and some people,
46.
including Darrell Waltrip, say I haven't learned much.
You still haven't figured it out
I'm
either.
still kind of back at 68. It's fun, and another new year. That's the great thing about this sport, Joe. No matter all the disappointments from last year, that's an old year. Everybody rolls out at Daytona in February, brand new year, new cars, new attitude, new everything. Everybody's a champion when they come out at Daytona.
I could always tell when the first of the year was coming around, start of the season, because Larry, literally, there was always a change. You kind of you perked up a little bit, and you could always tell. Has there ever been a year that you've gone into and said, "No, I don't want to do this anymore"?
Not really. As I traveled with the Tennessean for 30 some odd years, and some odder than others.
Yeah,
the travel and the grind and so forth would get old. Joe, you'd literally wake up in hotel rooms and you'd have to lie there for a minute and try to remember what city you're in, because you'd go airports, taxis, airplanes, rental cars, that kind of thing. That grind grew old. But once you got to the racetrack and saw all your buddies around, it's kind of like a traveling circus, as you know. Once you got to the track, saw all the drivers that used to be so much fun to hang out with, all your sports riding buddies, that never got old, and that's the part I still miss, being away from the Tennessean.
I used to kid you every once in a while about, the only difference between what I was doing every day and what you were doing is that your commute was, a couple thousand miles more than mine.
Yeah.
Because once you could tell, once you got to the racetrack, that was your office. You were in your element.
And every time I'd complain about how tough my job was, my buddy Roadhog would remind me, "You're traveling around the country covering stock car races on expense account. What are you whining about?"
That's right.
So it's all Roadhog had a way of putting things into perspective, Joe. He was right. What am I complaining about? I could have had a real job.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like my wife. Tell you what, we've talked about some things. 2012 is over. It's finished. It's done. Larry, let's talk about what I've pulled down as the top 10 stories of 2012.
David Letterman, go right ahead.
You think?
Okay. In reverse order.
In reverse order. Number 10, Fox is re-upped for 15 to 2022. $2.4 billion, Larry, for 13 races a year plus the Truck Series. 2.5. That's with a B, Larry.
That's pretty good money. I remember when James Hilton won a race and they gave him a case of Pepsi for first place. So there's a little more money in it nowadays than the old days.
In 1984, the last Cup race at Nashville broadcast, we were so excited. We had maxed things out. We got $5 grand.
$5 grand.
$5 grand for the rights.
And now?
Well, you just divide 2.4 by, what, 7 years and divide that again by 13 and...
Now, can you imagine offering Jimmy Johnson $5 grand for winning a race? That wouldn't gas up his motorhome for the infield.
You couldn't offer Jimmy Johnson $5 grand to come sign autographs.
Yeah, he would show up at a car lot for that. So. But it's good. I think it's good. These guys are the best athletes in the world. I'm glad to see that they're finally being recognized as professional athletes and being paid professional athlete money for going out and risking their necks 36 weekends a year. They deserve it.
Very good. Number 9. Brad Keselowski got hailed, if you'll remember, for tweeting during a race earlier. I think it's Daytona. Then he got fined $25 grand for doing the same thing later in the season because they considered his smartphone a computer.
Yep. And then reversed their position, as NASCARs want to do. I was just thinking, how far this sport has come. I don't remember Junior Johnson ever having a problem tweeting at the track. Do you?
No. No, I was going to say, the other half is I remember that the only additional equipment that I ever saw in a race car was Dick Trickle kept a cigarette lighter in his race car.
Yep.
And smokes taped, and when he got a caution, he would take care.
Yep. But tweeting was not a problem.
No, tweeting was
back
not.
in the good
Well, you
old days.
can't smoke and tweet at the same
No,
time.
of course you can't.
Trust me.
At least Brad didn't tweet while he was driving, though. At least the car was
that's
parked.
illegal, yeah.
That was parked. So
That's truly illegal.
Yeah.
At least in Tennessee.
And I'm assuming NASCAR won't let drivers tweet while they're going 200 miles an hour down the backstretch.
Keep your fingers crossed. All right, number 8. For the first time in history, the Daytona 500 was rain delayed to Monday. But it was not without excitement. On the bright side, Juan Pablo Montoya created a 2-hour fire delay when he drilled the jet dryer.
An interesting thing, that's the only vehicle Juan Pablo ever caught up to the rest of the season.
Well, he started the year, he hit everything else the year before. He was just trying to make sure that he got there.
Like the old, Harry Hyde memo to Tim Richmond that year when he had 4 or 5 wrecks, and he said, "Should I park it?" And Harry said, "No, stay out till the pace car comes out and try to hit it. That way you hit every vehicle on the track."
That's right.
So, kind of the same way with Juan Pablo.
Which was used in Days of Thunder, if you'll recall.
That's right.
I want you to go back out there and hit the pace car.
You've hit everything else.
Number 6. Or excuse me, we're at number 7. Former champ Matt Kenseth is leaving Roush Fenway Racing. It's the only place he's ever known as a Cup driver. Now he's going to Joe Gibbs Racing to replace Joey Logano, which I really thought would have happened the year before, but he got another year out of it.
Matt's a good little driver. He's just real low-key, low maintenance, flies under the radar. I don't think he's ever gotten credit for maybe being as good a driver as he is because he just doesn't make any waves. He goes out and does his job. But frankly, Joe, the last 2 or 3 years have just not been very productive. I think it's a good move for Matt, probably for Roush too. Sometimes you need a change of scenery just for the sake of change. So I think Matt will do well.
I was going to say, it's kind of after that, he won the Daytona 500 this year.
Won a championship in the past.
Yeah, but when you win the Daytona 500, that's the kiss of death. You're not going to win the title.
Yeah.
And then he won the last race, the chase race at Talladega, after that big mess on the last lap. Speaking of making moves and going, Kevin Harvick announced that he's leaving Richard Childress Racing. And he did this 2 days after winning the first RCR race that he's won at Phoenix in a while. Unfortunately, he made the announcement before he talked to Richard Childress, apparently.
And also, Joe, interestingly enough, the change won't go into effect till next season. He and Richard are still going to be racing together in 2013. And like we were saying before we came on, it's got like telling your girlfriend you're fed up with her, you're moving out, but you're going to stay 1 more year in their apartment. And then next year, by golly, I'm gone.
Yeah, after the prom, when the prom is done,
might be a little tense around some of those RCR meetings with me. Although, it's worked with different people. Casey Keene, he left a year early, announced he was leaving, so I don't know, but I still think could be a little tension hanging over that operation this season.
Number 5, the hottest driver the past 2 years, Kyle Busch, struggled to win at all levels, and even admitted it. We had the video here.
Yep.
It's one of those years from a guy who you still think is talented, and I'm still hoping will
this could be a big year.
Continue to improve with his personality delivery.
Joe, I think this could be a telling season for Kyle Busch. Was that previous success a fluke, or was he as good as I and a lot of people thought he was? I think this could be a very telling season for little Kyle.
I hadn't thought about it that way. It's a good point. Top story number 4 for the year. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finally broke that long losing streak with a win at Michigan. Made the chase, but not long after suffered a concussion. His second one, he later admitted, in that big one crash on the last lap at Talladega. He missed 2 races, fell out of a chance at the title. Larry got real honest right there at the end and said, I wasn't real sure. Yeah,
and it's got to be a tough call for Junior to make, Joe, to get out of that car. Now, realistically, he wasn't in title contention at that point. You know, he was, even if he didn't miss those 2 races, he probably wasn't going to be in contention for the championship. But you know how tough it is for these guys to get out. I think it's significant, Joe, because in the old days, and NASCAR, like in the NFL football, you just kind of almost laughed it off. In the NFL, they say, yeah, he got his bell rung. Nowadays, they realize how serious that is, and the question is, will there be any kind of lingering effects from the concussion for Junior that might make him decide to get out of the car permanently? Yeah. And that's something to watch out for, I think, as the season develops, and if he is involved in some more hard crashes.
You know, the scary part about that is, in all honesty, I used to kid about having played football and
got your bell rung.
Yeah, now I'm, between that and a couple other things, I'm beginning to wonder sometimes.
Yeah, it might explain a lot.
Well, it could. All right, top story number 3. After being fired again, Kurt Busch looked to restart his career with Phoenix Racing. That took a detour, though, when he was suspended again by NASCAR for verbally attacking a journalist at Dover. You know, Larry, I know you've had drivers that you just, as a journalist, you just don't get along with sometimes. Maybe a personality thing. One bad question and you're on the list forever. This guy just seems to keep doing it over and over and over again with multiple people, not just media members, but others.
Yeah, Kurt's about to wear out his welcome, as is his younger brother. But the Busch brothers have 2 things in common. They're tremendously talented, and they have rotten personalities and are hard to get along with, hard to live with. And so at some point, the rotten personalities start to outweigh the talent on the track, and it catches up with them. It caught up with Kurt, as you said, this year. I think it may catch up with Kyle. To their credit, they seem to acknowledge they've got some temper problems, and are trying to work with it, straighten it out. But the question is, can they do it? And I don't know. I don't think that question's unanswered. We might see the 2 most talented drivers in NASCAR since the Allison brothers that are both going to sideline themselves, not because they can't cut it on the track, but because they can't cut it off the track.
I think, and those of you who know me, you're going to find this, I think Kyle's closer than Kurt will ever be to being able to make that change.
It's almost Shakespearean to see 2 bright, talented kids like that just almost determined to self-destruct.
Yeah. Big story number 2 on the season. Jeff Gordon finally lost his cool. He crashed Clint Bowyer at Phoenix. That ended Bowyer's shot at the title when he was still in contention. Now, the outburst cost Gordon, the former champ, a fine, docked him points, got put on probation, and he's still smiling.
And earned him 1 million fans.
That's right.
Stock car fans like to see a little grit in their drivers. And I remember when Jeff Gordon crashed Earnhardt at Daytona one year, his popularity soared. I think, again, Joe, fans don't mind seeing that. They like to see a little give and take out on the track. Also, I think it's significant because it shows Jeff Gordon is not content just to ride off into the twilight of his career quietly like an old John Wayne movie. He's still fiery and determined to win some races and compete for a championship. And I think the frustrations boiled over with the Bowyer incident, and again, that reflects how much Jeff is determined not to just fade away quietly in this sport. He wants to get out there and win some races and another championship.
Yeah, and to prove that, he won the last race of the year down at Homestead.
Which is a good way to start the new year.
Yeah. The number 1 story, at least from everything that I can gather from all my sources, give credit to the captain, Roger Penske, for finally winning his first Cup title, and he did it with a relative rookie. And Brad Keselowski, and not rookie, but relative. I mean, he had less than 100 starts.
The captain and the kid.
Yeah, going into the season, Keselowski had less than 100 starts. In another unique twist, the champions manufacturer Dodge announced that it was leaving NASCAR competition again.
And Joe, I think the story there is, first of all, what a wonderful human interest story. The wonderful old Roger Penske, been decades in the sport and never won a NASCAR championship. Like you said, Keselowski, the kid, comes in and gets the grand old patriarch his first title. The significance of the car change, Joe, is just stunning. You've won a championship driving Dodges, and you dump your Dodges. So that tells you how important models are. I don't think the model of car makes a bit of difference anymore, Joe. Certainly not for the teams, as we can see. Penske just won his first championship ever, and is throwing his old Dodges off the cliff to try to go to Ford. The people in the stands, Joe, I just don't believe the younger generations are car guys like they were growing up with when you and I and people were working on their cars and the muscle cars and stuff. I don't detect that. My kid wants the old man to give him a car that'll start and stop and take him to where he wants to go and bring him home at the end of the day. That's all they care about, and I think that's significant. NASCAR's trying to regain some of this model loyalty with the new cars, which we'll talk about later. I'm not sure they can do it because I think the mindset of the fans has changed. I don't think we got car guys like we did when you and I were.
Well, you're probably right. Now, in fairness to Penske and those guys, Dodge is getting out. They're not just ditching them. Dodge is walking away, and they're not going to support them. They could still run the models that they have.
Which tells you another big story, Joe, about manufacturer loyalty. Used to, manufacturers were scrambling over each other to get in. I remember the big deal when Dodge came in that year because Casey Atwood here in Nashville was going to drive one of the new Dodges. He and Bill Elliott racing for Evernham Sports. I flew to Charlotte to cover the Dodge's coming out party. Now, a few years later, Dodge is getting out of town. Dodge is getting out of Dodge, as we say.
Oh, yeah.
And so that tells you manufacturer loyalty. I think it's dawned on them. People don't buy on Monday based on who won on Sunday anymore, like they did in the old days.
Well, and the other thing is, Larry, it's not like there's only 3 or 4 nameplates from Detroit that we all recognize.
Right.
There are 20 or 30 names out there, many of whom don't have, shall we say, American-sounding names.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that too a little bit later. All right, a little bit long here. Those are what we thought were the top 10 stories of 2012. When we come back, we'll talk about the start of the 2013 season. Getting underway this weekend in Daytona. Stay with us on Pit Pass.